was more about them than about us. And that is key. It sounds obvious, but a lot of people miss that.
Hey, Growth Techs, that is Lissette Callejas, Director of Marketing at the amazing Sweet Sparkman. And welcome to Season 3 of the Growth Tech Podcast, where we are diving into the hidden stories and strategies behind how some of the world's best firms actually win work. I'm Tyler Sumula, the creator of Growth Tech, and today, Lissette is going to share how Sweet Sparkman won the Reimagining Pei international competition focused on bringing one of Pei's renowned buildings back to life. She shares so many incredible strategies here that you can implement right away, including the one thing that she thinks made the biggest impact on their continued success. And before we get started, a quick shout out to The Studio, my private membership for growth-minded architecture firm owners and leaders. Inside The Studio, you'll access proven strategies, resources, and an unmatched community of peers to help you attract and win high-quality clients consistently. If that sounds like you, apply to join at growthatech.com/studio. That is growthatech.com/studio. And now here is the show. Okay, well, to start off, can you introduce us to the Reimagining Pei competition and what it was?
Yeah, so the Reimagining Pei competition was something that, it was here in Sarasota in our backyard, but it was a competition that was publicized across the world. So what happened was New College of Florida, they have Pei dorm buildings that were designed and built in the 60s, brutalist style 3-pod buildings that kind of interacted with a central courtyard. And so, they're iconic buildings, but they went into disrepair. So they had structural issues, mold, water intrusion, so many things that had gone wrong. So they were slated to be demolished. So we have a local organization, Architecture Sarasota. They're really invested in preservation, adaptive reuse, really preserving the cultural legacy that we have here in Sarasota. We have Sarasota School of Architecture is, all over this region. So they kind of teamed up. So Architecture Sarasota teamed up with New College and they said, we can't demolish these buildings. That can't just be the answer. Let's see what we can do to preserve them. So they decided to launch an ideas competition to gain as many ideas as they could, kind of get a good feasible solution. So then they could take that to get funding. So that was they tried a couple different ways to preserve the buildings and figure that out, but ultimately this was kind of their avenue to be able to do that.
Got it. So the goal, the framing of the competition from the beginning was very much, it's an ideas competition and maybe it'll turn into something, but we just don't know.
Right. And they had disclaimers on it saying this isn't going to guarantee a project because you still have to go through an RFP process for a public project like that. So, that was something that we had to kind of weigh out. It's not guaranteed. So what was interesting is that this competition, the Pei buildings, those dorms were designed in 1963. And the nature of that, the nature of how Pei got that project was a competition. That's how he got that project. So 60 years later, exactly, and this was in 2023, they put out that competition. So it was kind of keeping in the spirit of that original process, which was a really cool kind of additional factor to it.
Okay, yeah. So even given that, even kind of given the unknowns of it, there was still a lot of competition to it, right? So can you talk a little bit about how that competition went down and what happened with your submission process?
When you go into any submission, whether it's an actual project RFP or a competition like this, you have no idea who's going to go after it. But we had, this was published all over, Architects newspaper, all these different kind of national publications. So we knew that there was a pretty good chance that a lot of people were going to pursue it. So they had 35 submissions from all over the world. And they had to shortlist 3. And then those 3 would be given a stipend, $10,000 stipend to come up with a design concept. And then it was a public presentation. So it was, we just gave it a shot. We decided we'd just try, So they ended up shortlisting 3. One was international, Studios Architecture. Brooks Scarpa was the national, and then we were the local.
Okay, got it. Great company to be in, for one. From 35 down to 3 without any kind of additional vetting, let's say. like through the ideas, like through the jury, I guess. What do you
Right.
think it was that kind of made you all stick out?
So, one of the things that we always do with all of our proposal submissions is we make sure that we are really speaking to their pain points, really identifying who's on the selection committee and what the client needs. So, and they had specific criteria that they wanted us to answer. So, it was really about identifying what we could offer to meet their needs, making it less about us, making it a lot more about everything that they were looking to achieve. And we had a very, very specific response to their RFP. So making it as hyper specific as possible is kind of our key, that we always try to do with all of our submissions.
Yes. You're speaking my language. I love to hear all of these things that you're saying, right? The idea of speaking to their pain points, right? That it's more about them and less about us. I kind of want to tap back on it because what I often hear from people doing these RFPs, I think RFPs are so difficult. And actually, this is one of the reasons that I asked you to be on, because you were like, I do them all the time. I love doing RFPs.
It's
like,
my
great.
favorite.
Yes,
I do them all day long.
Then please let's talk about it, because a lot of common things that I hear in this is like, well, I don't know what their pain points are because I can't talk to them, right? I don't have like a direct line of contact to the client. So what's the process look like for you all to get in their heads and understand what it is that they need? Or did you find a way to reach out to them? Like what did that look like?
Well, so in the initial submission, we didn't have contact with them. So it was a written submission. For the next phase, we were able to talk to them and get a little bit more insight. We had a kind of a brief as a kickoff. But I think, we do a lot of research and we look at kind of some of the obvious things. They were slated to be demolished because it was a operational issue, financial issue, maintenance issue for them. And then you look at kind of some of their other goals and how can you make sure that it's a seamless, it's an easy kind of decision for them to make, that this solution kind of meets all those needs. So really thinking about every aspect of it. Everyone on the selection committee, it's, you have the president of New College, you have the CFO, you have the facilities team, you have different people with their different needs. So kind of thinking through all those scenarios is kind of how we usually approach it.
I mean, it's kind of doing the dirty work in a sense, right? So you really have to dive in. You have to do the research. You have to find out who it is that's going to be evaluating it, what their experience is, and then using your own like kind of historical evidence, because it's not like you all haven't worked on projects like this many, many times before. You can kind of you can use your own experience to help fill in those gaps, right? To say this is usually if this is their goal, then they're probably experiencing these issues as well.
Right.
And so you use that to kind of fill in and tell the whole story, it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, from whatever they put in the RFP, in the prompt, we draw a lot from that because they tell you what their main issues are, and if you listen, and you kind of context clue your way through that, connect the dots, and then connect to whatever you would expect their experience to be in the, we kind of estimate what the potential issues could be and how we can solve them. So it's just kind of an exercise we do,
Yeah, well, I love that because your answer is kind of like, well, they pretty much give you like the treasure map, right? You have to figure out the clues along the way, but there is an X that marks the spot there at the end that you can get to. You kind of do this journey.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they needed to figure out a way to save these buildings in a way that made financial sense and, also played into what the rest of their goals were. We have to make it easy for them to want to save it,
And there was another factor for you all, right? Because you had a previous relationship with New College that you also were looking to rekindle. Is that true?
Yeah, so that was one of our factors when we decided to take this on. So we had done work with New College over 10 years ago, more in a continuing service project capacity. So a lot of re-roofs, a lot of HVAC replacements, infrastructure type of things. And, you always take those projects looking for a larger project, that you really want to go after later on. And so those projects kind of dried up after a while, and then the administration changed, different facilities teams. And so we kind of got disconnected from them and we're no longer working with them. So it was really an opportunity to get in front of this new administration, this new team. We had no contact with them. So when we evaluated whether we were going to go all in on this and pursue this, it was really a matter of, we can get in front of them. It's also an opportunity for, healthy competition. We had everyone in our office was so excited to work on this. It created a really good dynamic, amongst our team to be able to participate in this too. So it's kind of a win-win. Even if we don't win the competition, we gain something else,
Yeah. You think the office was excited because it's kind of like a local project and it's something that people are familiar with and they can.
Well, I think it was a local project, iconic buildings right down the street from us. We're only a few miles away. And then the other factor is that, it's still a design ideas competition. So you get to be a lot more creative. Still, you can still be practical. You can still have something that's feasible and responsible design while still being really creative. So it was kind of the sky's the limit on this. And we knew who our competition was, and we knew that they had excellent creative projects. So we thought, this is a great opportunity to, bump it up. So that's, we had a few team members that had done similar work before, restoring and doing adaptive use projects similar to this. Someone did their thesis on, a similar topic. So we had a lot of people that had their own kind of connection to this type of project. So it really came, it was really something that everyone was passionate about. So it was cool. So we had about 2 months to do this design concept before we had to present. And we had about 8 or 9 people on the team that kind of dedicated their time to this. And in addition to that, every 2 weeks, our office does a pinup. And so we involved the whole office. Throughout the course of this competition, we pinned up and everyone got to be part of it. So it created a buzz. It was really, really fun.
That's awesome. I love that the whole office does a pinup. And how many people are in the office there?
So we have 2 offices, one in Sarasota, one in St. Pete. Our Sarasota office has 40. We have 10 in St. Pete. But we do pinups via Zoom as well. So really all 50 people get involved. And it's everyone. Everyone goes to the pinup, even the accounting team and the admin team. It's cool.
That's awesome. So, okay, so you've done the first portion of the competition. There was 35 submissions. You ended up being on the final 3. You have 2 months now to put together a presentation that you're going to present to everyone, right? It's like school administrators, students, local architects, any people that want to join. So kind of a public presentation. So what was the strategy that you took into that?
Yeah, so that was, typically for when you're going after an actual project, you have a selection committee that you're making sure that you're kind of addressing the things that they, are interested in hearing. But in this case, we had new college students. We had new college staff and administration. We had architects from around the community because this was through Architecture Sarasota. So this was something that everyone in the architecture community here was invested in. And then you had just general people from the public. You had some kind of city officials that were there. So when you have such a cross section of people, it really changes the way you have to tell a story. So that was key. So we identified that from the beginning, that we had to make sure that we really took everyone through the journey of how we arrived at our design solution and telling it in a way that everyone could understand if they have no architecture experience, or if they know all about it. We were able to kind of strike that balance. So that was kind of a key strategy. And probably the funnest part for me was kind of figuring out how to tell that story and really evaluating the story from all filters. So I would kind of go through the presentation thinking, okay, what is the selection committee going to think? What is the president of New College going to think? What is the new college student that could be really excited about this or upset about it? How do we make sure that the message is consistent, clear, and really kind of appeals to every single person that could be in the audience?
Yeah. And you were embedded, as I understand it, right, in those meetings and in those concept meetings, which I'm not sure if that's how you always do it, but probably it is now, given the outcome. But what was the idea behind that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I always try to focus on as the director of marketing is making sure that I deeply understand what we are doing so I can articulate it. So this was a unique opportunity because we got to see the concept from beginning to end in such a short time span. Typically, I follow the course of a project, but these projects take years. So I am kind of checking in on projects as they go. But in this case, I thought I can really follow this from the very beginning through every iteration, really understand the mindset of everyone on the team as they went along. So I sat in every single design meeting. So we had weekly check-ins, and I was copied on. We have a group chat, for each project. So I was included in that and just really made sure to follow the entirety of it. And it really gave me a unique opportunity to tell the story super clearly in a way that typically I wouldn't have the opportunity to, see it the whole way.
Yeah. Okay, now let me ask like a nerdy marketing question here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you say things, I mean, I love what you were talking about in terms of working through, what is the college going to think about this? What's a student going to think about this? What's a local architect? What's just someone in the neighborhood going to think when they're doing that? And I think everyone can relate to that exercise, probably, of thinking that way. The question is, how does it actually come to fruition? Right. So for you, and embedding that into the story, are there different moments in the presentation where their voices come out? Did you market it mainly to the people that are making the decision and then speak to the others in a different way? Like, how does that actually find its way into the presentation?
I think the key thing was kind of setting the stage for the common points that everyone needed to understand, regardless of where you fell on the kind of understanding of the project. So we started off with just basically giving people the context and the understanding for what does the college look like today? What are the college's goals? What were we charged with designing? And laying all that out. Everyone needed that foundation of the understanding to really follow everything through. And I think that we just kept it really, we had slides that spoke to particular things that we needed to address. We had a financial slide that really, I'm sure that the CFO was watching this whole thing and thinking like, this is great, but what I need to know is how can we actually make this feasible? So we made sure to add in key slides to address specifics, but overall, the main goal was to make sure that we kind of gave a really comprehensive understanding of kind of the key issues, the way that we tried to solve those issues, how we integrated the solution into their goals, and then how they can actually implement it.
Yeah. And I remember that you had mentioned this idea that you actually went beyond the scope, right, of what was required. And this was a large part of the strategy, like this idea that it's not just this building here, but you kind of went into the master plan of that entire area. Can you talk about the strategy behind that?
Yeah. So when we had our kickoff meeting with them, we were able to kind of sit down and talk through what the issues were and kind of how they arrived at this need to demolish versus keep it. So one of the things that they talked about, which we picked up as like a key pain point, is they had some goals for their east side of their campus. So the college was going through some changes and adding athletics where they previously didn't have as many athletic facilities. And so their vision was to make that entire east campus serve those athletic program changes that they had. So we really understood, and this is something that they kind of discussed, you guys are looking at the Pei buildings, but we're not going to be upset if you give us some more ideas on the east side of campus. So we picked up on that.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And we really understood the fact that in order to preserve those buildings and do any sort of adaptive reuse, we of course needed to make it financially viable, but we also needed to understand that it needed to fit into their goals, and we needed to make those buildings, make their new use, support those goals as much as we could. So it became a design solution that, in order to increase their athletics facilities on that entire campus, you needed to keep those buildings because we created a solution that supported that. So that was key for us winning it. I mean, I think that when they saw that entire master plan, we programmed all of the facilities around and integrated the paid dorms into it. It was kind of a no-brainer in the sense of, they can move forward with all of those goals with this in mind.
That's awesome. Yeah. So that's a really smart strategy. So you found a way to make it be like there's not another option. Actually, this is obviously the best option if this is the goal that you're looking for. So yeah, that's really smart. That's like sales 101. Right? It's the vehicle that's going to actually get them to the goal that they want to achieve.
Right.
So that's awesome. All right, just one quick detour. Growth-minded firm owners and leaders, I need you to listen up. What if you had a reliable way to attract ideal clients, communicate your value, and have a heck of a lot of fun while doing it? That's exactly what you're going to get inside the studio, my private membership with some of the world's best firm owners that has quickly become my favorite place on the internet. Inside, you're going to get access to more than 100 proven sales, marketing, and social media growth hacks designed specifically for architecture firms. You'll join our live growth workshops walking you through marketing and sales strategies step by step, and also our live solution sessions where you can get real-time feedback on your challenges from your peers, plus, of course, unlimited 24/7 access to a community of firm owners sharing what's working for them right now. Plus, courses, templates, tools, and so much more. There's honestly just too much value to capture right here. So if you're serious about investing in your growth and accessing exclusive strategies, then please apply to join us at the studio by going to growthatect.com/studio. That is growthatect.com/studio. I cannot wait to meet you. All right, back to the show. All right, so long ago, right, there was the ideas competition that the team had poured their heart into, and then you become a finalist, and then there's another, $10,000 isn't very much. Sounds like I'm sure that you poured more into it than that. I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
2 months go by, lots of pinups. You're in every single meeting. You've been working on this for the last 2 months. Paint the picture of what that presentation was like. I assume that it was a principal at the firm that gave that presentation, but what was the room like? How are you feeling in that moment?
Well, so it's so funny because I create these presentations and I'm so invested in the content that like I'm in the audience, but I feel like I'm saying the words because it's like so ingrained. I feel like I'm, speaking on stage when I'm just sitting in the audience. So I was sitting there with like a huge smile on my face like this, like very excited. So we had two of our principals presented, so Todd Sweet and Carl Bernhardt. We're really fortunate that our team presents really well, so they did a fantastic job presenting all the information. And it was really cool because we also included fly-throughs. So we kind of laid the kind of foundation for the project, the context, the problems, the challenges, what they wanted to achieve. Then we showed kind of program information, we showed renderings, and kind of pieced it together for everyone and led them to kind of how we arrived at it. And then we threw in some key fly-throughs. We added those in, and there was one point, one of the fly-throughs that the entire audience just like oohed and awed. And so cool. It was so cool to like look back at the recording and just kind of see everyone's reaction to the solution. So I mean, it was riveting. I love it.
Yeah. What's really awesome about that, and I think important to note, is that just starting off, like fly-throughs like that are important, but the impact that you're talking about, like their reaction and the oohs and ahs, don't happen unless you've spent enough time building up the context, right? The problems and the challenges they have, and this unique way of solving it. So there's so much buildup to even get to that, right? Because people look at that and be like, see, like renderings, people love renderings, they need to see the visuals. And it's like, yeah, that's true, but there's this entire buildup. People need to feel it, right? Those oohs and ahs are like emotions that are coming out, and those emotions are only there if they're kind of properly put there. You've almost like kind of put them into this position where they're primed. They're primed to have that reaction because they like want to see it, right? They just want to see that solution. So that's amazing. Do you think that was the moment where it kind of clicks? Like at that moment where you're thinking, okay, maybe we can actually win this? Because I assume there had been other, I don't know, were you guys first or last? But
we were last.
Okay, so you were last, right? So is that also the moment you were kind of sitting there and you're like, okay, we might actually have a chance here?
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see, that our storytelling was effective. So whether they liked our design solution or not, I felt confident that we told a good story and we really took everyone through the design solution in a comprehensive way. So at the very least, maybe they didn't like it, but they at least understood how we arrived at that. And I think that's half of the kind of challenge and task there, is making sure that everyone understands. And that's the key to winning a proposal. It's the key to winning a project is having, conveying the concept so clearly, They can have their opinions about it or not, but they got it. They understood what we were trying to achieve. So that was key.
Yeah, they understand it. It feels justified, the decisions that you're making. Yeah, that's really strong. And so then was the winner announced right then? Did you have to wait a little while? Like, what was the process? And then what was it like when you learned that you won?
So they ended up doing a public vote. So they had, you could kind of fill out a voting card right then and there. And then they had online voting open. And so they were only supposed to have it open for a couple days. They had to extend it because they were so torn and there was just so much, people were sending in emails and comments. And so they decided to kind of leave it open for a little while. But what's funny is back to your question of how did we know that we had a chance at winning this? So they opened it up for Q&A after each session, after each team. And they had invited the entire baseball team to the presentation. So they were probably a third of the audience all sitting together on one side. And so after our presentation, one of the baseball players, he stood up and he said, how long is it going to take to build this? He was
he wanted it. He wanted it. He wanted the outcome.
They basically were laughing and said, when can we have this now? Can you do it now? Because we had a whole baseball diamond in there. And that was one of the oohs and ah moments because they were planning on putting that in and we were able to add that into the plan, into the master plan in such a perfect way. So yeah, that was a moment where I was like, okay, this is pretty strong.
Did you know that they were going to be invited beforehand or that just happened?
No.
It was just coincidental. It kind of happened. It happened to work out.
I mean, they invited their student bodies. So they, and knowing that athletics was a big portion of the East Campus and, one of the goals, they were invested in seeing kind of what the potential was and what the design solutions could be to give them their facilities that they need. Because right now, all of their athletics teams, if they don't have facilities on campus, they're going to other facilities. So they're busing them over to other places. So they're really they were in a pinch to kind of, they needed this done yesterday. So that was another one of their pain points is kind of making this happen quickly. So, but yeah, so they had the voting extended a couple days and then we got the call and it was such a great moment. Todd got a call on his cell phone and I think he was walking past my desk when his phone rang and he looked at it and said, oh, that's Sweet College. And he ran into his office. So of course I'm peeking around the corner waiting for him to come out. And he came out and had a serious look on his face. Didn't want to reveal anything. And then all of a sudden he cracked a smile and told me we got it and gave me a huge high five. And that was an awesome day.
That's awesome. What did the team do to celebrate?
So we definitely had a happy hour. We had a couple happy hours. We had a happy hour after the presentation too, because most of the office came. So, we definitely celebrated for sure.
Thinking back on it now, and I know we've talked about some things as we've worked our way through it, but if you had to pick one thing that you think really made it stand out, what do you think that would be?
I think that the fact that we were able to put a solution together that addressed all of their needs, that was critical because, it seems obvious, make sure this design solution solves their needs, but that's something that sometimes people miss that, sometimes people don't address everything as clearly and think about what the client really needs. And that's, kind of what I said earlier is when we put in our initial submission, it was more about them than about us. And that is key. It sounds obvious, but a lot of people miss that.
Yes. Yes, that's something that I've encountered a lot too. But when it comes to reframing everything to be about them and so much less about the firm, where does the firm fit in to that story, right? And how do you squeeze it in so that it's not, hey, any firm can do this, but we're really the ones that can do it? Do you just lean on the fact that you've generated the idea, or is there something else that you're kind of slowly embedding into to kind of provide more trust into the team that you can all execute on that?
Yeah, so I think that we So in our initial RFP response, we highlighted specific projects that we had done where we did a similar, similar challenge, similar solution. And since this was kind of multifaceted, there's not one project in our portfolio that addresses all of it. So we put in a range of projects that addressed key issues that they had. And we made sure to word it that way, that we had done a similar project and, compared it back to their project. So whenever we're showcasing something of ours, we always relate it back again to the key problem that we're trying to solve, relate it back to them again. So it's not just, here's what we can do. It's, here's what we've done, and this is how we can bring that experience and that understanding, that expertise to your project and help you have a successful outcome. So always looking at it through that filter is absolutely critical.
Yes, I love it. So, and I want to say it again, right? So it's so important that when you're sharing work that you've already done, that you're explaining to them why that's relevant. And specifically, like, so-and-so had a very similar challenge and here's how we solved it. And then here's another one that was a different challenge, but it's also related to your project and here's how we solved it and here's how we can do it for you, right? So it's always starting back at the point of them, right? Their current situation, where they're at right now in point A, and they want to get to point B. Here's someone else that we've gotten to point B.
Right.
We can do the same thing for you.
And always connecting those dots, because there's sometimes where, you could do that. You could put together relevant experience and, in your mind, it makes sense. But you have to remember that they don't know the nuance and the intricacies of that project and everything that went into it. So it sounds obvious connecting those dots for them, but you really have to connect the dots, emphasize them again and again. So, especially with written proposals, it takes sometimes 3 instances of repeating the same information. So I make sure that if there's a key point that we are trying to get across, I include it in a couple different places and include it in a couple different ways. So making sure that the point is reiterated, not repetitive. I repackage the information.
Sure.
So it's not like I have the same sentence written 3 times.
Yeah.
It's really about what's that key point? How can we make sure that it's in the letter of interest, that it's in the project approach, and then it's in the project examples? Making sure that's woven throughout is also another strategy that I always lean on.
Yeah. I think every manager that's listening to this can relate to that, right? Because you do have to be a broken record so often and just continue reinforcing the same ideas over and over and over again until it really, becomes fully absorbed by the audience, by the people that you're kind of marketing to or speaking to. So very, very relatable on that. What's the update on the project, right? Because again, nothing was guaranteed. So where's it at today and what has it led to for you all?
Yeah. So their whole goal was to take these ideas to the state level and request funding. So we included kind of a cost analysis during the presentation. And afterwards, we met with them and provided some more cost breakdowns and a little bit more specificity and phasing. We kind of went through kind of 3 tiers of intervention on the buildings in a way that they could kind of start small and then continue building the solution up over time. So we gave them a lot more really tools to go to the state level. We kind of prepared them with everything that they needed to make their case. So that was also key,
Yeah, good idea. Make them have to do very little. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we always try to do is give everyone all the information. So then it's an obvious choice. We want them to get the funding as much as they want to get the funding. So how can we give them everything they need to get there? So we did that. We've had follow-up meetings. We check in with them from time to time. And, who knows? It's not a live project now. It's, definitely could be some years down the line before this actually is reality. I know they have some other things on the west side of campus that they have to kind of address first. So this is really a long-term goal, long-term project for them. And again, they have to RFP this out when it actually is live. So the benefit to us doing this entire competition is, like I said, we hadn't been, although we worked with New College before, we weren't, we didn't have a relationship with the existing administration that we didn't know. So now they know us. They've worked with us. It's a situation where they got to see how we operate in practice. They got to understand how we present the information, how we listen to their needs, how we're able to give them, cost, estimating and all of that. So I think that, we're well positioned for when this does become a real project. And, it's not a linear process when you're trying to win business. So RFPs are a lot of times instant gratification. You put in an RFP, you know pretty quickly whether you were shortlisted or not, and you have a presentation, pretty quickly after that. So sometimes there's value in not chasing the instant gratification project. These things take time, they layer, so I know that, looking back at some of the RFPs that we've won in the past and how those have built up business, kind of preparing us for the next project, we can continue layering the portfolio work to get some of these larger projects. So it's patience, it's the long game. And it's kind of fun when you see, something that you put together years ago, the project has completed, and now you're using that project to bolster your experience for the next one. That's so fun. I'm like the nerdy RFP. I think that it's just such a fun process to keep adding to the portfolio and seeing how the projects that you can win after that.
Yeah. But I think it's a really important point to make about the long game, right? Because a common goal that I hear from other firm owners is, the desire to move up market, right? They want bigger projects. They want to be doing these other things. And to your point, it's not usually like a linear growth pattern. Like you don't just kind of continually move up and up. It's like you go up and then you get like a foot in the door through like something really small. And then you can get up again, and then you get another foot in the door. And so it's like it's a very up and down process. And the idea of moving, or the process of moving up market, takes a really long time. Because even to your point, this is the market that you're in, right? You're in this market. You do these types of projects all the time, and even you all are like, yeah, it's worth it to play the long game. Like we should do this competition because maybe in 7 or 8 years this is going to turn into a project for us. But that's what it takes to win this type of work.
Yeah. Yeah. The big projects, the most exciting, are ones that we have, tracked for a long time, have done different things to kind of get in front of them, and have waited and monitored and kind of played our cards right. That's, I think, the instant gratification process of an RFP can sometimes be, super fun, but seeing how this kind of builds up over time, to me, is also incredibly fun.
Yeah. And for the firm owners that are listening to this now, right, we've kind of gone through the whole story. There's been so many tidbits that you've shared, so thank you so much. What do you think is the one thing that they should, take away from this, or the one thing that they should think about differently moving forward now with their competitions and their RFP process?
I think that what I mentioned before, kind of making sure that you're always looking at it through the filter of who needs this problem solved, and how can you be the person to put forward the right solution? What do they need to hear? What's important to them? Addressing all of those, things is critical. I think that, making it about them is critical. Having patience with the process is critical, and not being short-sighted with kind of the process too. I'm sure that we could have said, oh, this isn't going to lead to a project. We're not going to waste our time. Especially, It's a $10,000 stipend.
Much easier to say no. Yeah.
Much easier to say no. And I think part of our success is always we're willing to give things a shot, and we say yes a lot. Not to say that we're going after every RFP. We are strategic about it, but we do kind of side on the optimistic side of things. And with this competition, we said, okay, so we can... best case scenario, we go after it, we win, we get some really good publicity, we have a lot of fun in the process, and we're well suited to get the project when it comes live. Those are all really great things, and in our case, it was like we got most of those, which is really cool. But let's say we don't win. Our office had a blast. It created such a great environment for all of us to kind of share these creative ideas that we normally wouldn't, because not every project has this interesting of a design problem, So, I mean, we think of it in terms of, what do we have to lose? We only have things to gain from this process. So, I mean, and having fun was just like, such a great bonus. And it was so fulfilling for me to kind of get a chance to see this whole process from beginning to end and really sink my teeth into telling a story in a such a creative way. So that was, in my eyes, we gained so much from it, even though this project isn't a reality today. It's just going to be even more bonus when it does become out. And if we get a chance to get that project, it'll be, full circle moment, and that'll be exciting.
Yeah. Well, there you have it right there from Lissette, right? Have fun, right?
Have a good time.
Worth it to do things that get you excited. Morale is important. Culture is important.
Yeah. And I think people see that through the proposal. I think if people, when you're presenting and you're doing it in a way that excites everyone, that speaks volumes and that comes across. So I think that you can never go wrong with having fun in the process. It's only going to bring you more success. And I think momentum builds momentum. So there's so much that, we kind of continued gaining from the process, and it led to, I think, a really wonderful design solution and a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, to end it, tell us what's next for you and what's next for Sweet Sparkman.
So we have some really cool projects that we're working on. So a few others that, were another long game situation. So right now we are working on the Bay Park. So that's a waterfront part of town that was 53 acres, and the majority of it was a parking lot, literally on the water. So probably over 10 years ago, someone said, why do we have public land that's a parking lot? How can we make this better? So we've been working on that project from the beginning. So we completed phase 1 of Bay Park, and we have a couple other phases. And then part of that, we have the Sarasota Performing Arts Center. That's phase 4 of the Bay Park project. So that was a separate RFP, a separate process. And we were able to win that project as well. And so the design architect on that is Renzo Piano. So it's just been such a highlight to have the opportunity to work on that project. We put our hearts into that submission too. That was just, I think the Sarasota Performing Arts Center proposal and the Pei project are two of my big highlights, in the recent years, because it was just such a fun process. We wanted to really work on these two projects. So we're designing, we're working with Renzo Piano's office, working on the Sarasota Performing Arts Center right now. And yeah, that's kind of our main thing right now, just expanding into projects that we're aligned with. That's been a focus kind of, we've been around for almost 25 years. So how can we get the projects that we really, really want, rather than kind of some of the projects that you do to get your foot in the door, some of the continuing service projects? How can we, get really excited about our work and do some cool projects? That's really what we're focused on right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it sounds like there's many more to come. And Lissette, thank you so much for sharing this story. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. I know that everyone's going to be really excited about this. So I really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love talking about proposals, so this was fun.
There you go. Reach out to Lissette if you want to talk about more proposals.
I'm the only one that loves them.
There it is. All right, Growth Detect, thank you so much for tuning in. If you are enjoying the show, then please share it with a friend and leave a review so that other amazing architects like you can find us. And if you're ready to attract more clients, confidently communicate your value, and do so with the support of other amazing firm owners, then we want you inside the studio. You can apply to join today at growthatect.com/studio, and I'll see you next time, friends.